Hi friends, welcome back to the channel, and this is your daily news. So CPI data is out. Let's just jump in and take a look at these things. CPI report shows inflation ease in April, but remains stubbornly high. So it went down a little bit, but we still got it. And another headline, we may be getting used to high inflation, and that's bad news. The basic gist of it is that you go to the restaurant, maybe a couple months ago, and you're like, oh my God, this is too expensive. I don't want to pay this price. But then you go back again, you're like, fine, I really want to eat that hamburger. I'm going to get it. I'll pay whatever price you want. And then you get used to paying those prices. And then the restaurants also too, because they, hire back employees for higher wages. It's hard to decrease everything, right? So higher prices may be here to stay if you're willing to pay. And also too, if you got the ability to pay. Inflation is currently at 4.9. I do believe that is headline inflation. We'll take a look at the actual number. So it's 5.5 is your core, 4.9 is your headline. And the basic idea is that when you take out food and energy, because those are more volatile, that'll show you where core inflation is. So 5.5. So we're still well above what the Fed wants. Remember, they want 2% inflation going forward. You can take a look at this as well, is that year over year, we can see the changes in prices. So this year compared to last year, food is up 7.7% from last year, shelter up 8.1%. Transportation up 11, and then you have new vehicles up 5.4, and clothes cost more money. And I'd be curious your guys' thoughts on that one. We always, after lunch, actually just run around the shopping center around here and take a look at the price of stuff. And it is pretty interesting because I do notice a difference in sticker shock. Well, actually, there's a couple of things. I notice a sticker shock in sometimes food. But the big one actually I've noticed is Nike shoes. I'm just mentioning Nike because every time we go look, like, oh my God, like $200 for shoes. Like, what the heck is this? And I don't know if you guys have seen that around there. I exaggerate. It's more like 170, something like that. But it just seems like a lot of money for a pair of shoes. It's just something I've noticed a difference for me. That was feeling like sticker shock. In terms of month over month, gasoline up 3%. Used cars is also up 4.4. And, it's just sort of where I think this is going to be very interesting this summer, right? When we go into the sort of peak tourism season, if in fact gasoline spikes back up again. Because the reason why I mentioned that is if you take a look at the actual CPI data, like these are all the raw numbers, I'm showing you some charts in these things. Even though, say, month over month, inflation is up, 0.4%, essentially in March it was 0.1, and then in February 0.4. Like this thing can fluctuate. So we will see what happens, and I think, like I said, when the fuel prices come in for summer travel may have a big effect on stuff. Also, too, I want to take a look at the bonds. So I keep not just bonds, so like I keep tabs on these things. So the 3 and the 6, they're above 5%. The 12-month is at 4.72, and I was gonna say I keep getting emails of like savings accounts are over 4% now. I think some places are offering introductory offers of like, 6% kind of stuff. So it is what it is. The markets took the inflation today as mixed. This is as of recording. You never know in this day and age if there's some crazy announcement that sinks everything. But at the moment, we are mixed. Financials and energy were leading the downside, and then basically tech and communication on the upside. Someone actually mentioned this. I did a video on real estate yesterday. And someone mentioned in the comments, there's a thing called quiet selling. I've seen that before, and this was actually another indication of that. The home buyer's quandary, nobody is selling. Basically, new listings are down a bit, and overall, existing home sales are also down a bit as well. So things are slowing in the housing market. My understanding, last that I checked, and I'd be curious what your guys' experiences are, is that if you're going to go out and get a mortgage these days, you might be looking at something like a 7%, something like that. And also, too, for many people, maybe they are in the market, right? They're thinking, okay, I'll pay that 7%. But then they look around, it feels like prices are still high. And there's just not many choices of where you're looking. So it's going to depend. And as I mentioned before in the previous video, if you look at prices in the most inflated areas, let's say, for example, like in Austin, the ones that ran up the most during the pandemic boomtowns, what they're called, those are the ones that have to fall the most. So that will be a thing. Talking about things, George Santos pleads not guilty to federal charges. It's interesting. I wasn't sure. We know he was arrested, evidently, and he's going to go with not guilty. So good luck to Mr. Santos. 13 felony charges, including fraud and money laundering. I'll go through these exactly. So my personal opinion on this thing, I think it's going to be pretty tough for him. There's so many reports coming out. And he's even admitted to basically lying. But he's saying he hasn't committed a crime. That's going to be an interesting one. Can you lie and not commit a crime? Well, we'll see. So here's what he's got. He's got 7 counts of wire fraud against him. This is Santos. 3 counts of money laundering, 1 count of theft of public funds, 2 counts of making material false statements to the House of Representatives. Not good, Mr. Santos. And then he's saying here, this is coming from the Brian Peace. He is the U.S. Attorney for the District of New York. Repeated dishonesty and deception to ascend the halls of Congress and enrich himself. That's describing Santos. And then here's the lawyer for Santos that says, didn't respond for comment. The 34-year-old lawmaker has acknowledged misleading voters in the past, but has said he did not commit a crime. And he also announced his reelection last month campaign. Not that he won, that he's running again. So he's arrested. I can't help but laugh because I don't know. You're pleading not guilty. Maybe you're just doing that just for show so you can do a plea deal. But I think it's gonna be tough for him. And in fact, if guilty on all charges, he could spend the rest of his life in prison. Crazy, crazy times. Speaking of whether or not someone's doing criminal stuff, Icahn, is it Carl Icahn, I believe? So he's now under investigation, federal investigation, after short seller Hindenburg came out with a report and said, hey, there's a bunch of fraudulent stuff going on over there. The last one that Hindenburg hit was Adonis. And it's interesting because there was some people out there like, oh, no, we shouldn't do short seller, or short sellers are bad, et cetera, et cetera. And you'll hear that, people on YouTube, they'll try to say, oh, short sellers are evil, trying to hurt investors. And in fact, it's not really the case. One of the things that is a good thing about short seller, essentially you have these private people who can do investigations into companies that may be fraudulent, and that certainly protects you. So for example, if you hear someone on YouTube and they're saying, oh my God, you gotta buy this penny stock, it is so fantastic, it's going to change the world, it's going to be bigger than Apple, and you will see many channels do that kind of thing. They will literally say, show you the chart of Apple. I'm like, look at this thing, it's going to be just like that and go up 1,000 million %. And this is sort of why you actually do need independent people to investigate this kind of stuff and say, hey, we think their books are fraudulent. So there is a role for short sellers. If you completely remove that, then in fact you just have no check on what companies say. So we do need it, and everything is always in balance. That's the name of the game. Speaking of balance, this is an interesting one. So the FDA, they're advising birth control to go over the counter. Now, it's not yet over the counter in the USA, but that is something. And it's, and I know in the USA, there's some people who are anti-abortion. I get that. I totally get it. But I'm actually not sure how many people would be against birth control. As a category of birth control as being over the counter. I'm not sure. I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. And I'm just throwing it out to you guys because you may or may not know this. So that if you're in the USA, you have to have a prescription, right? USA, even according to map here, Canada, to get birth control pills, and then also to much of Europe. But in other parts of the world, like right now, I'm in Korea, much of Asia, you guys can see this here. You can just go to the pharmacy and buy it. And this is something that I'm just telling you, you live in other countries, go visit other places, not everything is the same. You can, and I don't mean the same in terms of medicine, you can actually get the exact same thing, medicine/drugs, but you can just go to the pharmacy and it's widely available, it's cheap, it's easy to use, and it's safe. And this is something that I think will be a really interesting change if they do that in the USA. Like again, I'm not in those circles to I adamantly oppose abortion. So I'd be curious if those intersect. So the people who really, really want to ban abortion are also really, really ban birth control pills. I'm curious what those camp is. So please let me know because I don't know. And that's what the daily news is. My feeling is the other thing with the debt ceiling, they're probably going to resolve something. I would say probably. The reporting keeps saying that they're not doing anything, no one's budging, but we still got a couple weeks left to go. They always wait till the final hour. So I'm pretty confident they're going to do something, but again, I can't tell you 100% because you never know in this day and age on the future, but we'll see. We'll keep following that. And I do appreciate always your time, and this has been your Daily News.